We have Yossi Klein Halevi with us. And first of all, Yossi, I want to say that we're all very excited to have you, and I'm very excited especially. And I want to introduce you. And while we are going to focus on your last project, as you say, rather than just a book, and we'll talk about the fact that it is a project. I want to introduce you and then talk a little bit about the previous books because I think that they kind of amount to a journey, which I think is very relevant for the current book and for current affairs. So Yossi Klein Halevi is an American-born author and a journalist here currently for the Jerusalem Post. In the past, you wrote for the New Republic and op-ed pages for the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, Los Angeles Times. You made Aliyah, you immigrated to Israel, right? Which is, you know, everyone who came to Israel, I applaud them. My parents did, and especially if they come from America or European countries, they left, Western abundant society to come here to, what it turned out to be okay, but who knew, right? And you are very active in many projects related to Israeli society and the dialogue between Jewish and Israeli Arabs and Israelis and Palestinians. And as I said, I want to mention your previous books because of various reasons. As I said, they do kind of talk about a journey, a personal journey that is relevant for the current project, starting with Memoirs of a Jewish Extremist. You were born in New York, and you were part of the following of the late Rabbi Meir Kahane, who was known to be who founded JDL and was a Knesset member of Kach Kahane Chai, was by definition Jewish extremism embodiment, and you drifted away from that and wrote your retrospect in that book. You also deal a lot with the experience of the others, in a sense, kind of a theory of mind, but just also theory of heart, as in trying to look at things to walk a mile in other people's shoes. And I think your book about at the entrance to the Garden of Eden, looking at the Holy Land from a perspective of Christians and Muslims trying to walk a mile. I don't know if in the Holy Land you walk barefoot, so I don't know if it's in their shoes or barefoot in their minds, and like dreamers, which led me to a guess. I will take an educated guess that we have we share the most favorite Israeli singer-songwriter. This is the one, Meir Ariel, the only one who you couldn't.
Indeed, we do.
Indeed, we do. The only one who you couldn't interview for your book, Like Dreamers, because unfortunately he passed away all too young. At a certain point, I wanted to write my master's thesis about him, and I still have. I don't know if it shows all of the references. I thought about writing about biblical Hebrew in his songs, because that's what I do. I teach biblical Hebrew, and I think that he was a master of Hebrew in all levels. So he uses also a lot of elements that are quite uniquely biblical Hebrew in his poetry. But I ended up doing other things. But you wrote about him, and he is indeed one of the seven figures who were part of your book, Like Dreamers, the seven figures who participated in the reunification of Jerusalem during the 6 Days War, and how they represent different aspects of Israeli society. And that leads to, in a sense, that leads to the current state and the current book, which deals with the different aspects of Israeli society and the current state of affairs with the Palestinians. So without further ado, I want to get into it. You call it a project and not a book. Your the book, currently the book, but the project is called Letters to My Palestinian Neighbor, and you call it a project and not a book. This collection of 10 letters. Why is it a project and not a book?
So first of all, hello everybody. Hi Netanel. Thank you for the warm introduction. Nice to be with you all. I'm speaking to you from Jerusalem, and are you all American? Netanel, everyone is American?
No, we are from all over the world. So
Oh,
I'm an
wow.
Israeli, but you've got people from Europe, from America, from Africa, sometimes from Asia as well. Depends who's here today, but from
Terrific.
all over the world, really.
Okay, well, really, really nice to be with everyone. So I wrote a book called Letters to My Palestinian Neighbor, which is a series of letters addressed to an anonymous Palestinian neighbor, literally on the hill across from where I'm sitting now. I live in a neighborhood called French Hill, which is at the very edge of northeast Jerusalem, Mount Scopus, that area. And I look out and I see the lights at night, as I'm looking now, of a Palestinian village. I hear the call to prayer from the mosque 5 times a day. And I decided one night to start writing a book, Letters to My Neighbor, who I am, who the Jewish people are, why we came home, why we believe this is home, the home that we share with another people, and how can we begin a conversation over reconciliation? How can we get to the point where two peoples who live uneasily between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea, how can we share this land? How do we get to a point where we can trust each other and create two sovereign states? And so I wrote a book which really tells the story of the Jewish people, of Judaism, through my own perspective. And I invited Palestinians to respond. And the book was translated into Arabic and put online for free downloading in Arabic. And I've received hundreds of responses. The book has been downloaded several thousand times already. It has been reviewed in Arabic language media in Saudi Arabia, Egypt, in Morocco.
More favorably than in the New York Times, I should say.
More favorably than the New York Times, exactly. And so I began collecting these responses that I was getting, and I published a new edition of the book about a year ago, paperback edition to Letters, and it has a new epilogue, Letters from Palestinians to their Israeli neighbor. And I decided to do something a little bit radical, which is to give the Palestinian respondents the last word in the book. And the reason I say this is radical is because this is a book that I wrote in defense of Israel, in defense of the Jewish narrative. And I decided to give the counter narrative, the Palestinian voices, the last word in the book. And the reason that I did that was several-fold. One was, first of all, to honor the courage of Palestinians who responded to me. Secondly, my purpose, and this really addresses your question immediately, Netanel, my purpose is to model what a respectful disagreement about almost everything sounds like between Palestinians and Israelis. We will never agree about why the Palestinian refugee crisis happened, which side is responsible for this conflict, why the peace process failed in the 1990s, the Oslo peace process. And so we disagree about everything. But I wanted to see whether we could model a respectful conversation over our irreconcilable differences. And so the book now, I think, is a very unique document in the sense that it tells the Israeli story, and then it has Palestinian voices telling a counter story. And it's in the same book, and we're speaking to each other. And it's a respectful, deep disagreement. And so the project really, my hope is to expand the circle of this respectful disagreement and to really try to model how we go about doing that.
Mhm. Right. While the title of the book is Letters to My Palestinian Neighbor, I think that if I understand, the book is not just aimed at your Palestinian neighbor, okay? Because it wasn't just written in Arabic; it was
Right.
written in English, and it is about to be published in Hebrew as well.
Yes.
And so, I the obvious
It's also in Japanese and Slovakian and Korean, and it'll be out in Czech soon. And
right, which, but they were not the intended audience. So, alongside your Palestinian neighbor, the intended audience is the international community to an extent,
yes,
the Jewish people in America,
yes,
the Israeli community here in Israel, and I will talk maybe a little bit about that later. But now I think there might be a new crowd which might be different than your Palestinian neighbor, and that is your Arab non-Palestinian neighbor, which now, in the current state of events, especially with the last normalization with the United Arab Emirates, and maybe future ones as well, might be different than your
yeah. So
Palestinian
it's
neighbor.
very interesting because I have a team of young people, Palestinians, a Moroccan, someone from Jordan, someone from Iraq, who reach out to Arabic social media and promote the Arabic translation of my book. And these are young people who themselves read my book and got in touch with me, and I tried to pay everyone something to, to cover their time and expenses. And it's a wonderful team of people. And they are now actively reaching out to journalists and others in the Gulf states. And we have people there who are now starting to read the book. And I'm hoping to really have a fruitful conversation with our new peace partners.
Right. And do you think that their view would be different now that, to some extent, they have retracted from the prerequisites of the Saudi Arab initiative?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. There's a real hunger in parts of the Arab world for human connection with Israelis. We've been demonized for so long in the Arab world. We've been turned into the monsters, not just of the Middle East, but of the whole world. That there really is this hunger to get to know the real Israel.
Right, they had a good premise to work with. They had a couple of thousands of years of others doing it before them. They had
Yeah,
the
yeah.
road
So
paved for them.
the Arab world has really done a good job of demonizing the Jewish people in the last 70 years, and so there's a lot of work to undo. It's going to require a lot of intensive work.
Okay, I want to ask about one of the points that comes up both when reading the book, but generally in the Israeli-Arab conflict. And with your permission, you know what? I won't quote directly from the New Republic uh, critic, review of your book, but it talks about the fact that the religiosity, as is commonly understood, is um, really continuing or even intensifying this conflict. I'll just read one sentence. By now, it is abundantly clear that such a cruel conflict is perpetuated only by the exclusive claim to God-given authority promulgated by the Messianic rabbis and mullahs. So obviously, whoever wrote it, I don't know. Mullahs is not really relevant here, but uh, people talk about religiosity and religion as being one of the key problems in this conflict. 2 days
Yes,
ago, just a second,
yes.
I want to complete the question. 2 days ago, we had a beautiful conversation with Rabbi Michael Melchior, and his idea of peace is a peace of through religion. What is your take on it? How is it contributing to the conflict, and how it may be part of the solution, if at all?
Well, I'm more of the Melchior school, although I think he's a little bit naive, and I'm a little wary of embracing a utopian religious peace. I think one has to realize that we live in a real world, even though this is the Holy Land, also the Middle East, and one has to be much more realistic than he is. On the other hand, I think that he has a very crucial insight, which is that this conflict is being fueled by religion. There's no question about it. Religion is part of the problem, but religion is also part of the solution. And there is no way to make peace in the Middle East without bringing some religious validation into the process. Each side is going to have to make very painful concessions. These concessions touch on our religious identities. For me to give up territory, it's not just real estate. This is the Holy Land. This is land that I believe God has promised Jewish people. I don't believe that I need to be in an eternal war in order to hold on to every piece of land that was promised to me in the Bible. I think that I have to be ready to compromise and accept the fact that God is telling me something in the year 2020 about reality, and I have to listen to what the real world is telling me, what our situation is telling me. I don't want to be a permanent occupier of another people. And so, but I will need my religious tradition to give me some direction for what it means to compromise on what I believe belongs to me. I believe this land belongs to the Jewish people, just as Palestinians believe that all of this land belongs to their people. So they'll need some validation from Islam for accepting territorial compromise. So one of the reasons I believe that peace has been so elusive is precisely because we have excluded religious voices from the peacemaking process, and that has to change.
Right. The Oslo peace process was very much like a peace between the Israeli secular left and the Palestinian secular left, and it
Yes.
left out to an extent that the majority, the traditional majority of both Israelis and Palestinians. You are yourself involved in such a religious dialogue through the Hartman Institute and the
Yes.
Open House Initiative. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
I sit at a think tank in Jerusalem called the Shalom Hartman Institute. And we have a program at the Institute called the Muslim Leadership Initiative, MLI, which brings young emerging Muslim American leaders to Jerusalem, to the Institute, to study Judaism, Israel, conflict, Zionism. And it's a terrific program. We've been doing it now for over 7 years. And we have
With Duke University, right?
with my partner is Imam Abdullah Antepli, who heads Muslim affairs at Duke University in North Carolina.
Right. We hope
And
to have Professor Bretler next week here, by the way.
terrific. Send him my best.
I will.
And so that's really the situation. Is we're trying to create a generation of young Muslim American leaders who understand the significance of Israel for the Jewish people. not who necessarily agree with Israel on our policies, but at least who understand what Israel means to the Jewish people. Because one of the things that we've discovered through this program is that most Muslims don't understand that Judaism works a little bit differently than Islam and Christianity. Islam and Christianity don't have a people, don't have a land. Judaism is meant for a specific people. Of course, you can convert to Judaism. You don't have to be born. It's not a race. You don't have to be born into Judaism. But Judaism is meant for the Jewish people. And so these are some of the nuances that we try to explain to the participants in the program.
Okay. What are the most, I want to ask two questions about, or maybe three questions about the responses that you received. You received hundreds and maybe more of responses to your book. And I want to ask, first of all, what was the most interesting and surprising, maybe even anecdotal response to your book? Secondly, what you deem as the most important response to your book? And thirdly, we'll keep for when we cover these two.
So I'll tell you one story. A few months ago, maybe by now half a year ago, I received a long email, 8 pages, from someone who lives in Ramallah, a Palestinian, and he tells me congratulations on a very successful work of propaganda. And he says everything that you wrote there is a lie. There wasn't an ancient Jewish presence in this land. There wasn't the temple. The Holocaust didn't happen the way you claim it did, and on and on. And at the end of
And
this,
it was signed Mahmoud Abbas. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Well, he does work for the Palestinian Authority, this guy, as it turns out. And at the end of this letter, he says, I'd be very happy in conclusion to meet with you and continue this conversation. So I wrote him and I invited him for lunch, and we met. We met in Jerusalem. And so we had a very long and interesting conversation, 2-hour lunch. And at the end of the lunch, he says to me, you know, when I look into your eyes, I see a person of truth. And I think what he was saying to me was, listen, everything that I have ever heard about this conflict from my side is the exact opposite of what you wrote in this book. But when I'm meeting you and listening to you, I realize you're not lying. So now I don't know what to do. Now I really have to think about this. And what that encounter taught me was never give up on anyone. When you have a human connection, when it's a person-to-person connection, surprising things can happen and God can come into the picture. And I really felt that there was something of the divine presence at our encounter. Now you're asking me what I think is the most important response. One of Saudi Arabia's leading newspapers gave the book a terrific review. And I think that really was an extraordinary moment. And we can now look at what's happened with the Gulf states. And now I can realize, okay, there was something simmering.
Right. There is no chance the United Arab Emirates would have gone to a normalization without Saudi consent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. And so really so I would say that for me, that was the most gratifying.
Right. So I want to ask one other question and leave a few minutes for the guys to ask.
Okay. Can we wrap up in about 5 minutes?
Yeah. So this is why I'm asking the last question. What do you think would be the reactions to your book when it is published in Hebrew here in Israel?
The good question. Look, I think that Israelis are understandably cynical about peace with the Palestinians. It's very hard to trust Palestinian leaders. But I'm wondering now, in the aftermath of this agreement, whether there might be an opening that didn't exist before.
Okay, we are on the more optimistic side. It's very, very easy to get the Israelis excited about peace. That's something that was unfortunate in the 90s, but let's hope we don't get into delusional thoughts now. I hope we are on a different kind of path.
I think so. I think so.
Right. And I want to open it for maybe one or two short questions from the audience because we want to do it, quickly today. And we definitely opened our appetite to read the book, and I sent everybody the link to Amazon, and they can
Great.
get it
Thank
there.
you. Thank
Sure,
you.
sure. So guys, if you have a question you want to ask about the conflict and about the book and about the whole process, you're more than welcome to raise your hand. Don't be shy about it. Okay. Yes. Okay. So if nobody's asking, so I'll be asking. How about you? Someone is Simon. Go ahead.
Thank you. I've been attending these sessions and I've learned a great deal. And we heard Dr. Rabbi Melchior Martin and his view of religion and the peace process. And in some ways, I've kept very careful notes. So a lot of what he said was very similar to what you're saying about building up personal relationships. When you meet a person, you can't then demonize them. So I saw a lot, which is very positive in both your presentations. Obviously, there's a however coming up, but there does seem to be two red lines that the Israelis will never give up the West Bank settlements, and the Palestinians will never give up the doctrine of Jordan to the sea. So whilst we can improve relations on an individual basis, the problem, the issue of peace, this is a hypothesis, I'm not saying it's a fact, it's a hypothesis, could be insoluble.
Yes.
When we talk about compromise, it doesn't include those two things.
So, Simon, my only quibble with you is over one word, and that's the word never. Never is a very big word, and we've seen so many changes in the Middle East. Anwar Sadat and Menachem Begin could never make peace. Menachem Begin would never give up settlements. Ariel Sharon, who built the Gaza settlements, would never give up settlements. The impossible has happened here. And right now, I don't see that happening. But I also didn't see the peace process with the Gulf states happening. So let's step back. Let's wait and see what happens. And for now, I agree with you, but I wouldn't use the word never.
Thank you. That's inspiring.
Yossi, do we have time for one last question from Abu Dhabi?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Sure. Georgie. Yes.
Thank you for your nice encouragement by this conversation. My question is, because I'm in Abu Dhabi and from India I am here. We have
what are you doing? What are you doing in Abu Dhabi?
Well, I was previously working. At present, I'm not working. I'm studying Hebrew and I'm in a small level teaching also in Bible school. So my question is that unlike in the settings over here, you cannot work in a Muslim community from down to up. It should be the other way around. You should get to the leadership first, then come down. So are you hopeful on that which can maneuver in Palestine?
No, I'm not at all, which is why I personally am working from below up, because I'm not a leader, I'm just a writer. So I work from below up. And I don't see the leadership in Palestinian society as being committed to an agreement, not yet anyway. But how is the atmosphere in Abu Dhabi with the peace now? Are people excited? Are they hopeful?
Yeah, of course, the expatriate community is very hopeful, particularly the Christian community. But when it comes to Islamic, there is a little bit of suspicion, and there is different people, positive and negative also on this.
And are Christians able to pray freely in the Gulf?
Pardon?
Are Christians able to pray freely in the
Yes, yes.
Gulf? Are you,
This
you have churches? You have churches in Abu Dhabi?
United Arab Emirates is peculiar for its nature because they are very tolerant to other communities, and for many years there is a link between the Islamic leaders and the Christian leaders. To last year was a year of tolerance. There was a lot of conversations like that. We have also teamed up for. I myself also was part of it. For interfaith dialogue, all these sort of things. Because here it is zero tolerance for any level of religious intolerance, whichever
Wonderful.
brand you belong to.
Wonderful.
So,
Well, thank you.
And
Thank you
another
very
thing
much.
is, one more thing, this land is the most number of churches, buildings constructed throughout the Middle East.
Wow.
United
Okay.
Arab Emirates.
Okay. So I'm sure we could talk much longer, but I know your time is precious, and I know that we cannot infringe more on your time, on your schedule. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. Very nice to meet with all of you. God
and-
be with you all. And thank you, Netanel.
Sure, we wanna give you a warm hand
Thank you very much.
sharing your time with us. We do, yeah, we do have so many other questions, but maybe some other time we can talk about Meir Ariel poetry. I should
Sounds
tell
good.
you that we hosted a modern Israeli poet. I don't know if you know Omri Sharet, but his
No?
poetry. He is a young. He won the Ministry of Culture upcoming poet and prize, and his poetry is also very influenced from the Hebrew Bible. So we read together a poem of his, and we hosted him for a discussion. It was lovely. So maybe we should host you to talk about Meir Ariel one day. Right.
Yes. Okay. I just want to answer. There's a question here from
Excellent.
From Clark Wilson. Where can I download the Arabic version? And Georgie, this might be relevant for you as well if there are people you know who might be interested. I have a website called
I will send the link. Yeah.
Letters to My Neighbor. It's not Letters to My Palestinian Neighbor. It's just Letters to My Neighbor.com. And if you go into that, you'll see there's a link to an Arabic page, and you can download the Arabic from that website.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Letters to My Neighbor.com.
Right. I will send the link to everybody. So don't worry about that.
All right. Well, blessings to all of you, and thank you for tuning into Jerusalem.
Right. Thank you very much for coming, and thank you for your time and sharing with us.
Take
Bye-bye.
care, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Right. That was short. Yeah, it was a bit short and sweet, but that's what the time we had. So it is fascinating, and I recommend reading his letters, which are very interestingly, they themselves are written in kind of a. He's trying to present both sides of the narrative, not just obviously he's an Israeli and a Jew, but he has a lot of understanding to the other side, and that's part of the essence of a dialogue, to try to walk a mile in another person's shoes, but maybe in the Holy Land barefoot. So that's that. As always, it has been a pleasure. A little bit about what's ahead of us. Tomorrow is a bit problematic. I might have to cancel on tomorrow. And certainly we won't have lessons Sunday through Wednesday next week because of the summer vacation. I'll be in the north So that's that. But next Thursday, I hope to have Professor Mark Bretler, which I've mentioned, also from Duke University, who wrote a fascinating book. He wrote a book about how to read the Bible, and moreover, he, alongside a Catholic priest and um, and uh, um, and a minister, a Protestant minister, wrote a book about the Bible and the believer, how to read the Bible critically and religiously, alongside a pastor and a priest, and they all kind of give their insight into that. And I thought it would be very interesting because I'm also both a scholar and a man of traditional faith. So that should be very interesting. And I hope we have set aside the date for next Thursday. I hope it all works out. We are kind of trying to iron out the details. And on the 30th would be Sunday. We'll have the history of Hebrew language. We'll go back to that. And 31st, Dr. Mordechai Kedar, which I've mentioned, which some of you have seen on TV. He is a very interesting speaker. He might be a little bit less lovey-dovey than both Rabbi Melchior and Yossi Klein Halevi. He might, he's got, but I should tell you guys, little do people know, he also was a very, very strong proponent of the peace process back in his own history, and today he has a very different approach, which is fascinating because it is related to the Emirates. He is suggesting his Emirate plans. It's called the Emirate Plan, and we'll talk about what Israel can learn from the United Arab Emirates in regards to the peace process. So that's that. I saw you had questions. Surprise, what was your question? Maybe I can send it to him. If you send, first of all, if you have any more questions for him that you wanted, that you think might be relevant, you're more than welcome to send me, and I'll send it to him if he has time. I'm sure he's got like hundreds of emails to answer, but we can try. What was your question, Surprise?
My question was just to ask if those letters was about spiritual peace or just general peace.
So his letters, there are 10 letters, and they deal with kind of different subjects. Some of them talk about more like the history and the religious background, and they certainly touch upon the matter of religion, as well as you have to understand it is definitely part of our yearning to return back to Zion. So we did not come back to a different to any country. It's not just a political safe haven for Jews, but it's a specifically chosen because of its history and its connection to the Jewish people. So it is definitely a part of the book. There are 10 letters. These are the 10 chapters of the book, and they deal with that different issues. Some of them are more historical and religious. Others are more contemporary.
I see.
Yeah.
So it's hard for us because since the lockdown, we can't get anything from Amazon.
Right, I understand, but you can get it online. You can read it on your computer, on your Kindle or computer. It's not just a hardcover or a paperback.
Oh,
You can actually read it as a file. So that's that. And I saw there was another question, guys.
I think
Okay.
otherwise, George and Simon.
So that's that. Nancy, did you have a question that you wanted to ask? You unmuted your microphone.
Okay. Oh, no, thank you.
So guys, I will see you possibly tomorrow, probably not tomorrow. So the next time we meet here is next Thursday, okay, 27th of August, hopefully with Professor Mark Bretler about reading the Bible both scholarly and religiously. We will talk about the Jewish viewpoint, but I'm sure that he would have an insight as to Christian viewpoint because he co-authored the book, as I said, with a priest and a minister. So that's the plan. And I'm saying goodbye for some of you for a week. That's a long time, you know. And I hope that we all are back here on the 27th. Yeah, so that's that. And
Thank you, Netanel.
sure. And we'll see what happens in September. We have some guests already aligned, and I hope that God gives me the strength to continue with this because it's
Amen.
yeah
Amen.
because it is something, you know, that is I think it's beautiful, okay, and I think we get a lot out of it. But I must admit it takes time, you know, I cannot have a guest and not know what is talking about, you know, so
busy.
right.
Yeah.
So
Thank you
That's
so
amazing.
much.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I will see you next Thursday. Some of you I'll see before, I guess, but next Thursday. Bye-bye, guys.
Yeah, shalom.
Thank
Lev tov.
you. Bye-bye.
Shalom,
Thank
shalom.
you.
Lev tov.